If you are not living the life that you want to be living and you're wondering why and you keep thinking it's confidence or you don't even know what it is, have a look around, check in. Do you have that conscious community? Do you have a champion? And are you leaning in? Are you tapping into that courage? Hello, Heather White. Thank you for joining me today on the Well Podcast.
Thank you so much, Lauren. I'm so excited to be here. Let's get well.
Yes, I am so excited to chat with you today. For my listeners and those of you who don't know who Heather is, you have been a high performance coach since 2007. I know before that you worked in corporate for one of the largest food distributors across North America. 2020 was when you transitioned into motherhood, which I feel like is a parking lot topic that I'd love to have you back on the podcast for, because I have so many questions about that. And something else that's really cool about you is that you have a black belt in jiu-jitsu and a silver medal from the World Championships. So y'all don't want to mess with Heather.
Until I had my son, and then I realized, like, that doesn't matter. By the way, just checking, can I swear? Because I was about to say that shit doesn't matter. Just making sure. Okay, good.
You're in good company for
Okay, good.
Yes. The thing that I'm most excited to share today is that you were also my very first coach, which is like so special and still is so special to me. I think that was back in 2016.
You would know. Yeah, sounds right.
I think that was back
sounds
in
about right.
2015, 2016. And I remember when I was back in corporate at that time as well, and our marketing manager had hired you to public speak at one of our corporate events. And I can remember just watching and listening to you in such awe and being like, who is this woman? And how do I become her when I grow up? Is there anything that you want to share about yourself that I haven't already kind of introduced or spoken to? You're still obviously full-time in the coaching realm while also being a mom and a sister and a husband and a wife and all the things.
Masculine, feminine energy depends on the day.
Yes. Anything else that you would mention or?
No, I think that's it. I mean, coaching, like, just a reminder, coaching's a tool. So I don't necessarily fully embrace this sort of embodiment that I am a coach per se. You know, I think one of my leaders and mentors, Rich Litvid, he talks about how like coaching used to be called leadership forever, and leadership not like I'm leading, like people are following me per se, but again, I'm like mirroring the leader within people. I think more than ever, like I'm not, unless I'm strictly wearing a strategic advisor hat, I'm listening for the wisdom within you, and I'm scaffolding you with courage to be able to actualize that and bring that into the world. The answers are 99% of them are within us, you know, so that's the only thing I would add. And, you know, having my son actually was such a humbling experience in the best way. I wanted to go on an apology tour. I still do, you know, because I didn't know, especially, you know, all the previous years since 2007 to 2020, so whatever's that, 13 years, you know, working with mostly high performing women, and so many of them were moms and a few men. It wasn't to the exclusion of men, and so many of those men were dads. Like, I had no idea. I didn't know. I didn't get it. And so now I do. You know, what a parent has done before 9 a.m. is like extraordinary.
Yeah. And it's true. Like, you don't know what you don't know until you know it.
Yeah.
And you can only just learn from those. And, you know, I often hear parents say, or moms say, oh, you just wait till you become a mom. You know, there is no rule book. There is no handbook for anything in life. And I also, you know, I loved your approach to coaching. I think that's also why I connected to you so quickly and so early on after meeting you. Is it's true. Like, I tell my clients the same thing. You're the expert of your life. I'm not here to tell you what to do. And if you're looking for that, you're actually looking for more of a consultant than a coach, because it's not my job to tell you what to do. I don't know what's best for you.
Yeah.
You know what's best for you. Like, I'm working on what's best for me.
Yeah.
You got to work on what's best for
Totally.
you. I'm
Yes.
just the catalyst to help ask the right questions, to help you find that wisdom and the courage to tap into it.
Amen. There it is. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, I'm really jazzed about our topic
Okay.
today. We could have talked about so many things, both because we both love to talk and also because we love to talk to each other. But I loved your idea of really focusing on these three key things that are preventing high performers from really excelling. And when we talk about the importance of supporting women, something we both are very passionate about, this is specific to women, but not only inclusive to women. There are men out there who are listening to this that are also going to be able to really relate to this. And contrary to popular belief, it's not about confidence. It's not about imposter syndrome. And that's not on our list of these three things that can completely shift for someone's results if they can incorporate these three things into their life. So before we just like come out with it and give all the juicy details, let's deep dive into confidence and imposter syndrome.
Okay.
Tell me your perspective on what confidence and imposter syndrome really are for those of my listeners that don't know or aren't familiar with the term.
So, okay, great question. So here's my take on it with the caveat, like I'm always willing to change my mind when I learn something new. To me, so first of all, confidence is a lagging indicator in my experience. And it's kind of a nice to have, a fleeting thing that sometimes is around and sometimes is not around, but trying to rely on it is real slippery slope. So it's sort of like, sunny days are nice for those of us that are solar powered and like them, but like I cannot control when the sun is going to be out and when it's not going to be out. Relying on it to be out is just kind of like a setup for like a setback, a letdown. It's just this thing we cannot control. And if I had a dollar for every time a client came to me thinking the issue was she needed
Yeah.
more confidence, I would be retired and extraordinarily wealthy. Um,
Yeah.
so I've been on a mission for a long time to sort of send the message that we got to get off of the idea that we need more confidence because again, like I said, it's lagging. Like it comes after the fact. It always seems to show up right, right after we've cultivated and taken some steps in the things we're going to talk about. And it disappears as fast as it came. And I think it's also what we think we're seeing in other, especially women, that we call confidence is not necessarily confidence, right? So we see some other woman standing in her embodiment of her feminine power, and we call it confidence. And I think we got to like peel it apart, look at it a little bit more closely because I don't think that's what it is. I don't think the most extraordinary performers are relying on confidence. And then let me talk about imposter syndrome as well. And again, like, so open kimono, not a psychologist. I do believe there's some research, et cetera, on the actual terminology. And, but for me and in sort of the practical, experience that I've had day to day, it's just not helpful. It's not helpful outside of maybe naming an experience that allows you to say, oh, I make sense. Like for me, I always want my clients to be able to get to a place where we move from what's wrong with me, like what's the matter with me, to I make sense. Like if I can make sense to myself, then I can make changes with myself. Like Carl Rogers, who's an American psychologist, he used to say, the curious paradox is when I accept myself as I am, then I can change. Most people in my experience are like, here's the laundry list of things that are wrong with me. So if I could like shore up all this stuff, then I could move into self-acceptance. So it looks like a paradox because it is, right to the very bottom, which is where the deepest truth is. Like true self-acceptance is the bedrock of change.
Yes.
So imposter syndrome, again, I see as like one of these things we sort of like, we're just quickly slapping a label on like, oh, like I have imposter syndrome. It's like, well, what is that? What do you mean? What's your experience? Like we haven't slowed down, right, to like check inside. What is that? How's that actually manifesting for me? What's actually happening? Like, what do I need? How is it hindering or how is it helping or like what, right? So yeah, so I have some issue with imposter syndrome because, and again, we live in this sort of like soundbite world I'm sure if you and I sat down for a couple of hours with like a psychologist or a psychotherapist or somebody that could pull the research on like, okay, so what are we really talking about? Then it could be
Yeah.
helpful. But we're watching like a 30-second TikTok video and like, oh yeah, I've got imposter syndrome. Like, that's the problem. Okay, great. So what are we going to do about that? So yeah, I take some issue with some of these just sort of like snippet. And again, I think it just perpetuates the narrative for women. Like there's something the matter with me, something wrong with
Mhm.
me. Right. So I really want to be, Tim Ferriss often asks, like, at the end of his podcast, if you had a billboard and you could put one sentence on it, like, what would it be? And what I would want that sentence to be to the world and to every other human being walking with me on this journey right now is, you make sense.
Yeah.
You make
Yeah.
sense.
That's
Right.
such a great simplistic way of looking at it because again, when you think about working with people, building those relationships, learning about each other, you're really kind of you have to get to the root of what's going on. And when you talk about imposter syndrome, just kind of slapping this diagnosis on your of like people diagnosing themselves like I'm an imposter, I immediately started thinking about my experience with food. I had all these food allergies, so I get eczema or break out in a rash, and so it's easy to go to the doctor and for them to be like, "Here's some cortisol cream," like, you're an imposter. You
Yeah.
have a rash, but then
Yeah.
it's like, but what's happening in my gut that's creating this rash, and what am I consuming? It really brings you back to that. It's like you have to connect the dots, and I think we do that a lot too with clients and with people to help them understand why they are the way they are. Sometimes it's hard for people to show up and have that self-compassion that's required in order to accept or heal or move through that wound, and being able to help people connect those dots to truly understand like, oh, I embellish, or this is my defense mechanism because of this. Of course I over exaggerate things as a defense mechanism. I never felt heard as a child, so I had to scream in order to feel heard. We're really talking about, I mean, a complex topic when we look at it that way, but it's so true when it comes to imposter syndrome. It is not just like a blanket statement.
Well, and it's a symptom, to your
Yeah.
point. It's a symptom. It's like, if that's your experience and the label of imposter syndrome helps you with the lexicon to kind of name, oh, like that's the experience I'm having. That's great. But that's sort of like the gateway drug. Like that's the entry point. Like, okay, so let's
Yes.
double click on this now. All right. So if imposter syndrome as a concept helps you name and claim an experience that then helps you sort of contextualize something that then you can dive deep into with somebody that could support you exploring like what's the actual lived experience, I'm all
Yeah.
for that. What I don't
Yeah.
want is like us to just label these symptoms as imposter syndrome, because then we're going to start managing the situations
Yeah.
and circumstances and contexts that lead to that, because that makes sense, right? So like, I'm not going to ask for the raise, or I'm not going to step in, speak up in the meeting, or I'm not going to attend the event, or I'm not, right? I'm going to start managing my behavior and my interaction with the outside world because I have imposter syndrome. So I don't want to be uncomfortable. I don't want to, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. It's almost like you end up perpetrating it into reality because that's what you believe is true. And so then it becomes it.
Right.
So, what do you think? Why do you believe so many women think that confidence is the problem?
I think probably mostly because that's sort of the message that's been perpetuated to us underneath it all. We have been indoctrinated in socialized and culturalized into a belief system that is I am the problem,
Mm,
right? Like, and so especially
absolutely.
because we're working with high performing women, right? They can't necessarily point to some of the early, like, they have the money, they have the house, they have the job, they have the vocation, they have the business, they have like, right? Yeah. If anybody in their life were to look at their life, they would speak about this person like in the context of like, well, this is a person that has it all.
Idolize
So I
them.
think they've already done a lot of the sort of what I might call like first mountain climb. They've already
Right.
done a lot of that work, right? So now they are in a place of self reflection. They are in a place of self assessment. They are like in an examination of their life. But because of this indoctrination into this idea that like ultimately I'm not enough, right? I'm somehow fundamentally flawed. Like it's got to be me. They sort of
Mhm.
arrive at this conclusion that like, okay, it's a confidence issue,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Like it's a confidence issue. I just need more confidence because then I could, right, do whatever it is that's the sort of next second mountain kind of climb. And so, and I wonder, I'm curious about whether it's also a subtle protection on behalf of the unconscious program. Like if I just convince her that this is a confidence issue, like she'll spin around in that rabbit hole like forever. And I never have to worry about her stepping outside of this zone of familiarity where we live, where she
Yeah.
wrestles with this, it looks like I have it all, but actually I want more. And I don't know how to even articulate that because that feels greedy and selfish and egotistical. Right. So I'll just convince her that she can spin around in this confidence issue. Right. And she'll just stay stuck in that fishbowl. And I never have to worry about her stepping outside. So in a way, convincing her that she has a confidence problem is how I will keep her safe.
Right. Yeah, that's a great way of explaining it. Absolutely. So when we look at diving into these three key things, I'll let you take lead on which one you want to talk about first.
Okay, great. I mean, I think the first thing, and I discovered this very honestly through the experience of my own life, we need each other.
Mm,
Like, we need a community and we need a legitimate safe space. Okay, we talk a lot about safe spaces a lot all the time. I don't know about you, but like, I have experienced more times than I'd like to talk about um, other women not being safe, not being supportive, and not really standing with and for the expansion and evolution of my possibility and potentiality as much as we talk about that, right? The lived
yeah.
experience that women walk through all the time is not that. It's not safe, right? There's a reason we have terms like tall poppy syndrome, right?
Yeah.
There is a reason. And I think particularly for high performers, it becomes even more exacerbated as a challenge because again, like I said, everybody looks to them and says they have it all. Like, how dare they want more?
Yeah.
And the challenge with that is because, and this is the curious thing about self-actualizing women is like, actually women don't go out and buy sports cars. And I mean, you know, the women that are on the self-actualization journey, they don't even buy necessarily facelifts or, and again, I have no judgment to any of these things. Get it
Yeah.
all, get whatever you want. But the women that
Yeah.
I know that step into the greatest possibilities of their potentiality immediately look around and say, how can I help? Like, how can I
Yes.
help? Immediately they're looking, how can I help? So denying that receptivity of the next, right? Their desire for more is not about something being wrong with them, like that they can't somehow rest in the gratitude of what they have. Their desire for more is actually this call, right? That includes all. There's a benevolence to that ability for them to move into a new level of receptivity because they instantly go to, how can I help? And last time I looked around, um, I don't necessarily want to get into the planet conversation because I don't necessarily believe the planet needs our help, but fellow humans, oh Lord, we need each other's help. Like, we need each
Yeah.
other's help. And these women step immediately into, how can I help?
Yeah.
Immediately.
Yeah. I think a lot of women still have a really hard time trusting other women, building relationships with other women in particular. You know, we talk like sister wounds, right? And it's because we were kind of raised in a society that taught us to be against each other, not for each other, not with each other. And when you think about how creating, some women, I know it's very difficult for them to create other female relationships or surround themselves with other females who are passionate about the same things, get excited about the same things. I have very few women in my life who when I get together with them, we we dream. You know, we talk about these insane ideas of how we can take over the world and, you know, what we can create and how we can show up in the world, who can we serve and how can we serve them, and just simply because we want to. And it's true that there are a lot of women out there still kind of wondering, well, how do I create, how do I find those healthy relationships, those other safe women in particular that I don't feel I have to compete with, and there's genuine care and support there for everyone to succeed, and there's like enough room for everyone too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think
Yeah.
we have to trust that they're out there. They do exist. You're absolutely right. And there is, like, we got to do a vibe check. This is the beautiful thing about stepping into an intentionality of placing yourself in a community of other self-actualizing women is inherent in that is going to be the practice of truth telling, like internal truth telling,
Yeah.
permission granted to admit to yourself, like, I don't feel safe around that person. That's enough of a vibe check. Like that, like we don't need to
Yeah.
go beyond that. And that doesn't make them wrong and you right or them bad and you like nothing. It's just like, no. And we've got to practice that level of sort of radical truth with ourselves and then
Yeah.
keep it moving, keep it going, right? Like I've stepped into countless communities of supportive women where I'm like, I'm not safe here. And
Yeah.
that is no fault of anybody's. That is just a check in with myself. And so I keep going, just keep
Yeah.
going. But
Yes.
I do
And
know
I think,
isolation is going to absolutely crush us. We cannot be in isolation.
yeah, I agree. And on the topic of community too, right? There's a difference to be, and I think this is a really important discernment is there's a difference between community, like you said, and a conscious community.
Agreed.
Right. And so for our listeners that maybe don't know the difference, I know I would kind of describe that as um, perhaps intentional, a community that is intentional about its impact in a nutshell, because those
Mm-hmm.
types of conscious communities can look different, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
women supporting women, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's a charity you're all getting together for, like whatever it may be, whatever you're coming together, even a neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that coming from a small town, I can already hear my listeners thinking out loud saying, yeah, but I live in a small town, coming from a small town myself. I don't have people here that are interested in the same things as me, or I don't know where to find these people. There aren't anywhere in this small town to go out. And it's like, it's your responsibility to put yourself, if that's something you desire, something you are seeking, or something that you've been lacking, and now you're listening to this podcast thinking, oh my gosh, I need a conscious community. This is one of these things. It's like you have to put yourself in rooms. You have to seek out those opportunities. Sometimes it costs money going to a retreat. You know, for me, that's what I do is I look for retreats and workshops that I know there'll be like-minded people at. And yeah, does it take a bit of effort? Yeah, but is the effort worth it when you find the right people? Absolutely.
Absolutely. And we do have Zoom. Okay. For like
Mm,
as much as I am an enormous proponent, I just had a lived experience again where I was reminded, like, oh no, like I gotta be in the room. And yeah, we do. Okay. And if we can't, okay, we have Zoom. We literally
yeah,
do. So we can use that until we can get together. You know, I'm in a mastermind where we spent 6 months on Zoom until we could get together. Right. And there is no doubt, and every single person in that room would have admitted, like, oh my God, there's nothing like being together. And
yeah,
6 months of Zoom was better than sitting in isolation. But to your point about the intentionality, like I do, and this is something that could also be co-created. And if your listener, like you said, is like, I'm in a small town, and right, you're probably the leader. If you can't
right.
find it, it's probably because you're gonna start it,
Yes.
right? And the first thing you could do if you wanted to is think about, like, what are the shared agreements that I would need that would make me feel safe in a space with other women? Because I think there does need to be, to your point, intentionality. And I think even furthermore, like a set of shared agreements, like what are the agreements we're actually making as we
Yeah.
step into this circle with each other? This is different than like getting together with your girlfriends and like watching a television show and having snacks on the couch. Um, because this is about a cultivation of a community that's going to hold you while you expand into the next level of your potentiality that you can see. This is a community that's there for you to have the space to say, like, yeah, it looks like I have it all, and I want more, or and I want different, or and I'm scared, or and here, like, here's the place I can open my kimono. So I do think if you're sitting there like, oh, I really would love that, and I can't find it, or it's not here, consider the idea, like, are you the creator? Is it because
Right.
you're going to create it? And are you going to become the magnet that pulls towards it uh, other conscious women who are desiring to be held in a community that is safe, like really safe, for real, like my kid says,
Yeah.
for
For
real life,
real.
safe, for real. Not just saying we're safe,
You
right?
know, it's funny because that's what ended up, that's what started when I started doing facilitating masterminds myself. That's what started it is I had all these incredible women coming to me from all these different friend groups or jobs or careers I'd had. And they're all coming to me being like, man, I wish there was somebody else like you that we could be friends with. And I'm thinking like, I have all these women that I have access to that are in my network why am I not bringing all of them together? I can't be this person for all these people. And that's what inspired me to actually start launching my masterminds, was women just speaking up and saying, hey, I want to meet other women that are interested in the same things as me. And it's true. That's such a great question. If you aren't finding it, if you don't see it available to you, perhaps you are the one meant to be the creator of it.
Let me add a caveat, because this is
Okay.
also a cul-de-sac that high performers can go down. The creator of it, but not to distance yourself from the receptivity of it. This is what often can happen to leaders too, is like, I'm the leader of the group, right? So like I create it and I bring everybody together and everybody comes and gets this juicy experience, right? Except me, because
Except
I'm
me.
worrying about, so just a caution, right? Like the
Yeah.
call to be the creator, but one of the first shared agreements you should offer the group is, right, the passing around of the leadership torch, right? Like who's hosting, right? Just ensuring right off the bat that you're not going to create a community where a whole bunch of other women benefit and you kind of are on just on the outside of the beneficiary component of that because you're the leader. Just a cautionary tale on behalf
No.
of a lived experience.
Yes, no, that's actually a really great point, because I recently did this last year. I started a networking event. A lot of people in my area were asking for it. I went in with the intention of, yeah, like I'll spearhead this, but I also wanted to benefit from it. And almost immediately I was like, okay, this is so not what I was meaning to do. Now I'm this is not what I was trying to create. This isn't equally beneficial for me. And actually started having conversations with some of the other women, being like, is there something that you're passionate about that you want to bring to these meetings that you'd like to talk about? Then life happens and we get sidetracked, and I haven't revisited it since, but I will. But that is a really important part to mention. And I think it's also a great segue into our second key component for high performers who maybe aren't getting the results that they want, and that's having someone to champion them.
Yeah.
you were
Yes.
my first you were my first champion in the coaching realm,
Yeah.
right? Like I was like, holy shit, I want to be you. Even though I was quite young still and in corporate and lost and didn't know what was going on, you're like, you can do this. And I remember starting the consulting business first and then COVID hitting, and you're like, you've always wanted to be a coach, like now is your chance. You can either go back to corporate, or you can just start coaching, like shit or get off the pot, but you can do this. And you didn't say shit or get off the pot, of course, to me at the time, but it was in a similar
If you
context
met
of
me in
like,
2007, 8, 9, I might have. I think 2016, I don't think I was saying that anymore, but yeah, exactly. Yeah.
yeah, it was like, get there
It's
and do it.
it's imperative. Like it's become so clear to me. And again, even recently with the lived experience of I've been having a new champion in my life. And I add the caveat of chosen, because I think what is a champion in a nutshell? It's somebody that reflects to you, I believe in you. Like they just,
Yeah.
the message is they embody, I believe in you. Like I believe in you and I believe in what you want to do and I believe in what you can create. Where I add the chosen component, and like you're talking about for me, like, you could have had a person in your life say all those things. But it was the fact that I already had a coaching business. I think that is adds the element in that particular context for you that not only does this person believe in me, they have created to a degree something that is in the context of what it is that I want to create, right? Like
Hmm.
it's not enough to have a champion believe in you, like fundamentally as a person. That would be to me more of like a mentor or a friend. A true
Right.
champion in this context, I think, in answering the question, like how do we move away from thinking we have a confidence or imposter syndrome problem and actually create some scaffolding that allows us to step into the evolution and the next iteration of ourselves. A champion is somebody who is already somewhere contextually in a place of relevance as it relates to where you are thinking about being guided to, wanting to, desiring to move in the direction of. Does that make sense? So
Absolutely. I mean, when you think about investing, right? You think about investing in things, whether it's programs, workshops, retreats, online training, certifications, like whatever it is, the best investment that you can make, if you're prepared and committed to the process of creating your dream life or hitting those goals, it's like, find someone who has what it is that you are trying to create and that you want, and invest in yourself by investing in them, because they can give you the roadmap. It's not about doing an online training. Yeah, sure, it might be a lower price point, but is that online training going to be able to get you to where you want to be in a more efficient or real life circumstantial way that somebody, that's what you want to do? Because the ROI on investing in yourself, if you are committed and ready for the process, is going to be the best return you're ever going to get.
Absolutely. Yeah. It just closes the gap, right? Like again, and we're talking to like smart, educated, resourced women, right?
Yeah.
Like uh that's it. Like somebody that believes in you but is also embodying a place on the journey that you have a desire to get to.
Yeah. For me, the reason why I wanted to become a coach was because I wanted to become the coach and mentor that I felt I never had up until meeting you. But that was already in my mid 20s when I had met you. And all my life being very ambitious and, which is a whole other side of trauma response. But, I had a lot of male mentors in my life. And I'm very appreciative of that because being somebody at such a young age that was very proactive, wanted to climb that corporate ladder, there was a lot of men in those executive positions at that time. And so I was always being supported by men, which I'm very grateful for. However, when you get to a certain age or you get to a certain point in your career or certain positions, there's just some areas in which I felt men could not support me because they didn't understand my experience. And I think that's also why I was so inspired when I met you, because I thought, holy shit, there's a woman here doing this. Like, she's going to get me and see me even more than I already feel supported or seen by these male mentors. But there was something there that it was like, no, I am choosing to work with a woman to really lean into this because I know this is what is right for me now.
This is such an incredible and important point because again, there's a different way of being, and so many high performing women have been mentored, championed, and exclusively guided by men. No, nothing wrong, bad about that, except for there is this entire like river of possibility in them, right? And so all the more reason, right, for women to continue to step into the embodiment of possibility. And like there's so much we can gain from our male champions, our male mentors, our male guides, our male coaches. So much. And like I cannot tell you the number of times I add a caveat to women coming to me with a program, whether it's from like 5 a.m. club or 75 hard or
Yeah.
coaching program of choice, like you name it. And it's like, just remember that was written by a man. That's let's just remember that, like, just take it into consideration. Maybe not, with the level of fluctuating hormones, maybe not understanding moon cycle, maybe not understanding, the fact that you've had a baby, maybe not, they don't, it's not a judgment. It's just a fact that we have to take into consideration. Right?
It goes back to what we talked about at the top of this conversation is you don't know what you don't know.
Amen, girl. Exactly.
So first two key things that we are talking about when it comes to being a high performance human, male or female, is really, really focusing on number one, community, conscious community, finding people who want to have the same intentional impact, having a champion, a mentor, someone who can help guide you, specifically somebody who, preferably is doing what it is you want to be doing, what you want to create in your life. Those are going to be the people that can guide you there in the, most clean and clear way, essentially, with, of course, the exception of a few. The third one.
Yeah.
I love this topic. Courage.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Tell me about courage.
We're disconnected from our courage. Like we have been systematically and on purposefully disconnected from it. And like it is the ability to action the heart call, right? Yeah. Like we get these nudges from within us, and it's the ability to actualize them and activate them into our lived experiences, right? And so we have been systematically sort of disconnected from it, I think, because there has been a real genuine fear in the zeitgeist that has been placed into the consciousness of humans around like what happens when a woman steps into her power, what happens when a woman steps into the activation of her heart call.
Yeah.
And I'm here to say, spoiler alert, all good things. all good things, except for, right, that we don't stand for um, not dismantling the things that don't work. Like there's not a fear on behalf of courageous women to burn shit down. And that's scary. That's scary for other people that are attached to having things stay the same, right? So I think there's been a very intentional effort over generations to keep that sort of disconnected, um, and to scare ourselves. Like, I mean, again, I don't, I am the biggest Elizabeth Gilbert fan. Okay, so just let me just add that caveat. But I would also be retired. Well, I probably would not because I couldn't not do this. But I'd be wealthier than I am, if I had a dollar for every time somebody's real fear surfaced, which is that they would have to eat, pray, love their life if they actually listened to what was going on in here. Like marriage was going to go upside down, uh, have to move to the other side of the world, shave their head, move to Bali, grow out their armpit hair, abandon their family. Like the visceral fear that on behalf of women to listen, right, and take action in accordance with this is, I'm going to have to blow up my whole life, right? So
Yeah.
it's immediately cognitively dissonant to her values, that it just becomes a no, right? A no. I'm not listening to that voice. I'm not listening to that call. And so I'm here to say, like, I haven't met anybody so far that's had to eat, pray, love their life in almost
Right.
20 years of doing this. I, I've got a lot of people who have moved to Bali. Like, I will say that. Two in the last year.
Wow.
So, you maybe you'll move to Bali, but one moved with her family. So, all things are possible. So I think there is a truth to the known that, oh, there will be some shakeup, some burn down, some transformation,
Hmm.
inside of the changes that are sort of being emanated from this heart space. But they're not going to hurt the people. Like, the things you'll have to let go of are actually so different than the things you think you're going to have to let go of.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we talk about earlier, we were talking about how you don't know what you don't know, right? Well, that's a double-edged sword because you
Mm.
can't unknow what you know
Oh
either.
yeah, yeah. It's a tough
And I
one.
find that for me in particular, I know this about myself that once I know something, like, and not just like in an arrogant way of like, oh,
Mhm.
I know this is what's happening. It's like
Mhm.
intuitively in my
Mhm.
body, if I
Mhm.
can feel that I know what to do next, what decision to make, what path to take, what trail when you're out on the woods, like, I'm not going to argue with it. It's like now that I have that trust within myself, I know that once I know something, it's going to be a very short matter of time before I take action. And the more that you do that too, the more you tap into the courage, because knowing is just the first step, right? There's that awareness.
Yeah.
But then it's like, well, I know this is the right thing to do, but am I going to be courageous enough and take action and actually do it? That's a
Yeah.
whole other separate part of it
Yes.
all. And I find that the faster you're willing to fail, the more you're willing to embrace uncertainty, you will move through those things faster. And whatever decision it is the right one. There's a lesson to be learned, or there's an opportunity at the end, or you create whatever it is. And I think it's really important to remind people that, like confidence, courage is not something that you're just going to have.
No, it's
It,
not a black car service that's going to pull up in front and pick you
yeah,
up.
yeah, you have to flex that courage muscle.
Mhm.
I tell
Mhm.
clients all the time, and if they work out, it's like lifting dumbbells. You got to practice doing courageous things
Right.
in order to, well,
Which is
courage can create. Go ahead.
absolutely, well, this is why we need the community and the champion first, right? Because you need a place to land, right? You need a place to hold you when you're in
Hmm.
isolation, especially because we know the power of the rational mind. The rational mind is not interested in
No.
transformation, right?
Mm-mm.
It's good with change, right? But it's not interested in transformation. So it will run you around, different cul-de-sacs, whatever. But as long as you don't leave the subdivision, like, your mind is cool with that.
Right.
The second you entertain the idea of, like, building a plane and flying out of this place, then the mind's activated, the whole nervous system is activated, right? And this is why we need the community and the championship. We need to know there's a beacon, there is an energetic footprint already that exists in the world that we have like sort of honed into, that's like that is possible because I know they're doing it, they're doing it, they're doing it, they're embodying it. Like these are, it is possible. And I actually have activated courage and stepped out to be in a relational field with that person. And I have a community that I can say like, because actually, to be blunt with you, like I think I am still at a place where even though I act all the time on my courage, I still don't often know. And I write myself permission slips all the time. I can change my mind and I can go back and I can repair. And right? Like if I were to take action and my biggest fear is that I'm going to hurt somebody else because I'll be misunderstood or I'll be misinterpreted, I continue to remind myself like repair is always possible. Like circling back is always possible. Changing one's mind is always possible. Turning around is possible. Because sometimes what we just needed was that first step. Like we arrive at the airport and we realize like, I, I don't want to go.
Yeah.
That's right. So this is another thing. It's kind of like, this is not a set it and forget it and a one and done. And right. This is like truly like self-actualization is like wading into the ocean, right? Like there is no guaranteed outcome. There's no reverse engineering of like, okay, this is where I'm trying to go. And then I'm just going to like, boop, 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 boop. And then here's the action steps I can take. Like that masculine model of creation does not help us on this journey. It doesn't. Like, that's why we need a circle. We need to be together with other people that are holding us, like other people that are safe, but also other people that are, to your point, like intentional about why are we even together? We're not just coming together to, to talk about, pop culture. Like there's an intentionality and a shared set of agreements here. This is a safe space because the intentionality is to step into something that we're scared to step into. Courage is not the absence of fear, as we know, right? Like, scary.
Yeah.
And so how are we making peace with our fear? Well, that's part of being in a community is so helpful. It's like, I am actually scared, right? But the co-regulation of this community is helping me and helping my nervous system soothe itself, right, to a place where I'm not just overriding my fear and just pushing myself into action, right, which can create so much trauma and like all this stuff we have to go back and repair in ourselves. I'm speaking my fear. I'm talking about what's coming up for me as a result of whatever courage or heart call is sort of attempting to work through my life. And I'm looking into the faces and the eyes and the hearts of the people in my community as they mirror back to me. This is safe here. This information is safe here. This share is safe here. You are safe here, right? And then my nervous system can lean on that, on those mirror neurons. Like I am not being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. I
Right.
am, right? So that is the power of that kind of a community because it is going to be dysregulating. If it wasn't, and again, this is where I think so many of us sort of get it wrong. It's like, oh, if it didn't feel that way, you wouldn't be actually stepping into the possibility of transformation,
Right.
right? And it like suffering is optional, right? Like you can lean on the co-regulation of your community to turn down the volume of your suffering, to hold you, for them to have you, so you can do the brave, courageous thing
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
land somewhere like, okay. And other people can hold you and hold that vision for you of who you're stepping into the embodiment of, right? So it's almost like there's a safe place for you in that future aspect that you're like, right? And there's that same energy will meet you there.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. It's like then what you are seeking is almost going to rush towards you because you are in a
Precisely.
energetic position where you're open to receiving it, you're ready to receive it. You have those people there supporting you, holding you up, believing that it is true and that you're deserving of it as well. And not necessarily in like a codependent way where it's like I
Mm-mm.
need these people in order to
Mm-mm.
believe this.
No.
There's a difference there. And talking about courage and reflecting back on the whole focus of confidence and women thinking that they need confidence, well, it just reminds me of when you think about being confident, you can be courageous without being confident, but you
Absolutely.
cannot be confident without being courageous.
Amen.
So
Right?
courageous is the real flex. Like that's where the focus should be, because just as an inevitable bonus, you will start to feel more confident, but it's not actually about people perceiving you as confident, because if you're not actually confident, then where is the value there?
Well, exactly. And people, we got to just let people's perceptions go because I mean, I don't know about you, but like your perception of yourself is clouded by a million, right? So their perception is clouded. Like, so like we said, let it go. Other, like we are going to be misunderstood. We're going to be misconstrued.
Yeah.
We're all, yes, 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 but you're 100% right because confidence is the lagging indicator that comes from the evidence after you took the courageous action, right? It's like
Yeah.
confidence is not unlike, to me, it feels very much, um, part of sort of the egoic and mind-based identity structure. And again, I love all parts. So I'm not an ego eradicator person. Like it's all part, but not unlike, the ego is the voice is going to be like the first to take credit, right? And it's like confidence kind of rides shotgun with ego. I feel like it's just like, right, like first to take credit. Like that was just, look at the feedback we're getting. This is such a great idea. And it's like, really, where were you? Just out of curiosity, right? When I was
Yes.
like sweating with like a ball of anxiety in my belly and heart led into this action. Where were you? Right. You were not here.
Yeah.
You were missing in action. And yet here you are, like ready to collect the trophy. Like, look at us. So to
Totally.
me, I welcome them when they're here. It's like, yeah, that's the level of safety that the ego needs, right? Is the evidence. It needs
Yes.
that level of safety to show up. And so every time it shows up, I'm like, you're welcome here now. Like, and I get it. I get why it's absent when there's no evidence, right?
Mm,
Because the fear of the of the pain of being wrong on behalf of that identity structure is like so strong, so debilitating for that part of us. I get why it's not available and not online for me at that time. I that makes sense to me, and I get why it comes
right.
swooping in the second you get whatever evidence from your lived experience that your courageous action was right, was true, was real, was the thing you were destined to do, and then there it is, right? Like ready for its rewards.
Yeah. It's funny you speak about evidence. I think it was actually you that taught me this. Evidence journaling.
Yeah.
Is that, I think, because when I first launched She Can Consulting, my first business, I remember having,
Well, I tell people to make it to create an evidence log to
exactly.
actually document the evidence, right?
Yes.
Because you don't need it until you need it.
Yes. Yeah, and I tell my clients to do the same now. I absolutely apply that tool, because and there are times when you're in entrepreneurship as well, right? Or even business, when you are trying to create something, when you are going after your goals, to some degree there will always be this familiar feeling of, if we want to call it imposter syndrome for the sake of the conversation, it's
Hmm.
like there's always going to be that there. It's not about outrunning it or learning how to manage it. It's actually really about being courageous enough to sit in it, be
Absolutely.
okay with that uncertainty, because if you are that type of person, you're always going to be working towards something new. You're always going to be excited about a new project or creating something. And if you are constantly pushing your boundaries, then you will constantly be in that feeling, in that arena. So it's not about learning how to, like, work it, manage it, overcome it. It's actually about how can I be in it and still feel really good and take positive action on a daily basis that will get me closer to where I want to be. And the
Exactly.
evidence journaling is a beautiful way, am I a coach? Do I know who the audacity that I have? Who do I think I am coaching people? It's like, well, let's go back and read my testimonials. Let's go
Hmm.
back and remind myself how I have helped people.
Hmm.
This evidence is now giving me the courage to continue to step up and show up for myself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, imposter syndrome to me is just a way of your system signaling you that it's like, I don't feel safe here, right?
Mm,
And the reason I don't feel safe, and this is part of the problem with the lexicon, I think, of personal development, right? Like we call it get out of your comfort zone. Like that is so like nobody lives in their comfort zone. If you're alive and you're a human, like fucking uncomfortable
yeah.
shit happens all day, every day,
Welcome to
right?
adulthood.
But right, right, it's a zone of familiarity. This is why we see
Yeah.
like we'll see pattern domestic people that suffer from domestic abuse, and they'll be in the same, like, right? It's a pattern of familiarity to the nervous system and brain. And let me just add the caveat, like, I'm no neuroscientist, but here's my understanding, right? That brain and nervous system likes to be able to control and predict, right? To be able to know what to draw on, to be able, right, as a mechanism for keeping you safe and alive,
Mm.
right? So it would prefer familiar all day long, right, over new. New is
Absolutely.
scary because new, and like this is another thing we see when somebody, especially high performers, right? Like, I'll never forget a client. The first assignment I gave her, this dates me, was that BlackBerry is going off for the entire
Mm.
weekend. Okay. That was a zone of complete unfamiliarity for that person, right?
Mm.
Unfamiliarity is scary for the parts of us that like to control and predict every outcome,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
not like we got to throw out the comfort zone, and like it's just, are we doing something unfamiliar? And when it's unfamiliar, it makes sense to me that an imposter syndrome would show up per se as a symptom, right? Perhaps because the
Mm-hmm.
idea is like, I don't have the neural circuitry to be able to predict what's going to happen here. So I can't control anything and I can't control you. So you're not safe. So, right. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm in an alarm state now. Like, I'm panicking, I'm
Right.
freaking out on your behalf because all the parts of us that have adapted and adopted different modalities for keeping us in a state of predictability, otherwise a state of familiarity, like, they panic,
Yeah.
right? How do
Yeah.
I do my job right now, right? We have all these parts in us with assigned roles from all the various past experiences where something
Yeah.
went sideways, and they're like, how do I do my job right now?
I don't use that language now that you're talking about it. I don't use that language a lot. Is outside your comfort zone. I think I used to, for sure, when I was more green getting into this, and I'm still green and learning so much, and learning how much I don't know. But when we talk about that comfort zone, it's interesting because for me, I think to that intuitive feeling that you get because it's unfamiliar territory will be scary. But the way that I distinguish it is, okay, is this my gut telling me, like, no, don't go down that alleyway because we've never been down that alleyway and we don't know where it leads? Or is this my intuition telling me, don't go down that dark alleyway because there's danger? It's a different kind of no feeling. It's not just like, this is unfamiliar. This is actually feeling very unsafe. My safety feels at risk. And I think that's kind of a good discernment. Is it like, no, don't walk home at 2 a.m. by yourself in a back alley? Or, yeah, take the back alley during the
And
middle of the
this
day.
is absolutely, and this is the key in my experience, why community and championship is so important. Because for me, my protection system is so sophisticated, it will convince me that it's dark alley, too scary, don't go at all, could die. When
Yeah.
really it was not any of those things, right? So I need the checks and balances of my peers to
Mm-hmm.
help me sometimes arrive at a level of discernment, right? Because
Yeah.
my protection system is so sophisticated. It like, I don't underestimate its ability to talk me out of avenues for transformation
Amazing.
all day, every day.
Yeah.
Highly possible, right?
Yeah.
And I'll convince myself that whatever it is that I did, that was the road, right? Like, so that's why I want to be surrounded by people. Not, and again, this is not the kind of community where there is that harshness. This is the
Mm-hmm.
kind of community that's like genuinely rooted in curiosity. Tell
Yeah.
me more, like, what's happening for you, like,
Yeah.
like, let's expand on that. So back to the shared agreements, and back to sort of like, what are the things we want to hold this community, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is
Yeah.
cultivating those feminine powers of
Mm-hmm.
curiosity, right? That are going to be gentle, right? And don't underestimate, like, gentle does not mean weak, and
Yeah.
feminine does not mean, right? These are some of the most gracious, grounded, like, strong in their flexibility practices that will actually allow you to unfold.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Talking about energy, masculine, feminine, I could go on a whole other tangent about that, but we don't have time for that. And that's a
Damn
rabbit
it.
hole for another day. But in summary, high performers, particularly women, if you are thinking that it's confidence, if you are thinking that it's imposter syndrome, get curious with yourself. Be courageous enough to get curious, get honest with yourself as well. And just as a quick summary, those last three things there are: if you are not attaining your goals, if you are not getting the results that you want, whether you're a coach, whether you're an entrepreneur, it doesn't matter what you're doing. If you are not living the life that you want to be living and you're wondering why, and you keep thinking it's confidence, or you don't even know what it is, have a look around, check in. Do you have that conscious community? Do you have a champion? And are you leaning in? Are you tapping into that courage? Any final words or pieces of advice for our listeners around these three topics that we've kind of talked about today?
Again, I just think permission and self-trust is just going to be so important. These women and, and men, but, primarily my work is with high performing women. They're the ones everybody goes to, right? They are the safe place for everybody. They are the champions for so many people. They are the magnet that all these other people are aspiring to, right? So what you really want to check in with yourself is, right, do I have a safe space? Right? Is there a place where I get to go where the person looking back at me isn't reflecting, what's the matter with you? You have it all. Like, how could, right? Is actually reflecting back to me, oh, this makes so much sense. You're right where you're meant to be. Yeah, you have summited the top of the first mountain and you are ready.
Yeah.
You're ready to move on, to go deeper, which is going to allow you actually to go higher, right? You're going to start asking different questions. Your life is likely going to change, but not just change, transform, right? Like there's that saying in transformational leadership, right? All transformation is change, not all change is
Changes
transformation,
transformation.
right?
Yeah.
So to the woman listening, like, you're not interested in changing, you're interested in transforming. And it is scary. It feels scary because it is scary. It feels hard because it is hard. Like these are very real things. That's why I believe we need the community, right? We need to be together so that we have the co-regulation and the support and the normalization, right? And we need the champion. Like, we need to know it's possible. They're out there. They exist, and we need them to literally tell us, I believe in you. I believe in your ability to do this, whatever it is, right? So that we can do what's on our heart,
Yes.
right? Because that, I don't want them to be stuck in a place where they feel the heart, they feel the strings pulled, they feel the 2 feet in their back, they feel the nudges, right? And they don't have what they need to be able to scaffold, support, and hold themselves to take those pulses from within that heart space and actualize them in their life. Because again, like I said, when women do that, the very first thing they do when they step into that actualization and they receive back the evidence is they say, how do I use this greater access to resource to help?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
Beautifully said. It's so true. Heather, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for joining me. It's always so nice to see you, to catch up, to hear your voice, see that beautiful face of yours. For my listeners, if they want to follow you, learn more about you, where can they find you?
Heatherwhite.ca is website stuff, _Heather_White, Instagram. That's like where I like to hang out in terms of social. Yeah, come hang out.
Amazing. Thank
Yeah,
you
thank
so
you,
much
Lauren.
again.
Just adore and love everything about you, all that you are, all that you embody, all that you do in the world. It's just such an honor and pleasure always to be in your space. And thank you so much for inviting me on. And to all the listeners listening, thank you.
Well, thank you for being my champion.
Anytime. I'm
Talk
here for
soon.
it. You bet.
Heck yes.